This one is all about getting started.
Getting started. Okay.
I slept an hour and a half last night, so I'm not going to be with it.
I think everything's on the table, especially if it's from the perspective of somebody who's starting out and coming up the line, because I think everything gets clouded afterwards, because when you're shooting 2 or 3 years, it feels like you've been shooting forever, because you have actually technically learned 80% of what you need to know, but you have lost that perspective of being a beginner. That's gone. It's not in a bad way, it's just gone. So it's nice to hear it from the outset.
So in the introductory episode that I did, it basically went into the background as to, with regards to my first kind of experience with archery and how it started out.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go too deep into that. Okay. It was a thing that the first time I ever shot, I was just like, oh shit, I love this. And even though I wasn't using the right equipment or anything, because it was literally, I was handed a bow, was handed an arrow, shoot away, and nobody showed me how to line anything up. Nobody showed me how to do anything. I literally just point and shot, was like trying to figure it out as I went along or whatever. But just loved it. Loved trying to figure it out. And I'm not into physics and everything, but it was about figuring out, okay, if I point it this way and if I pull it that way, it's going to do this and it's going to do that. So it's not a case of just point straight.
Yeah.
Because then, depending on your distance, you're shooting down or you're shooting up and whatever. Yeah. So I really like that kind of physics aspect of it. And I think that's probably one of the things that surprised me a lot about it when I first started, was it's not that simple.
No.
And it's something that people probably think, and I think we addressed that in a previous episode as well. A lot of people think you go in and you just pull this and you point there and it does that. It's really not that simple. But it's also not that difficult. It's not, I'm not going to put people off either.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
And that's what's nice about it as well. When you say that it's not just a case of handing somebody a bow, when you have that conversation with somebody when they're in a beginner's course and they start to look at bows and they ask, oh, right, so it's not just a bow. A bow has to be tailored, if you like, to suit me and me alone, and the limbs, the riser, the length, the poundage, arrows, bow style, everything. But that's all part of the learning process. There's nothing too intimidatory about it. There's nothing too academic about it or anything like that. And even then with your form, when you're working on something and say a coach or another archer suggests something, then all of a sudden then you've got ownership of that as well. It could be maybe holding your bow. Just say you're canting your bow, or your hand is dropping, or you're not rotating your elbow. And you've had that discussion. You don't need that person to be in your all. You get a certain grasp of it, and then you figure it out for yourself. You have ownership of that. But there's nothing mentally taxing or academic, or as you say, you don't need to be
a blackboard doing equations.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the provision of equipment by clubs, how do you think that helps people starting out?
I think it's very obviously when somebody starts out that you do need to hand them a bow. That's the whole point of the exercise. And the bows that we use, they're basic training bows. That is in no way a detraction from them as a bow. They are fantastic bows. A lot of people out there use them. I still use them, but they're ideal because they come in such a range of sizes and poundages, which you wouldn't necessarily always see in the mainstream high-end bows. What I like about the training bows, you can get them down to maybe 48 inches in height. Poundages is in and around maybe 10 pounds. You've got a huge range there. It's ideal for people starting out. And then obviously for some people continuing on. My own daughter shot with one for years when she was starting out, did really well with it. Then she eventually got her own bow. So it's very important for clubs to obviously have the right gear, safety gear as well, your wrist sling as well, and finger tabs if you're not using the string protectors. But as we often say when people have finished the beginner's course, it's not that we don't want people using the bow, the beginner's bow, but they will never explore their own full potential as an archer until they get their own equipment. Because that bow that they buy, it could be the first bow, it could be the first of many, it could be the one that they keep forever. That bow is going to be tailored to suit them. And that's not going to happen with a training bow. Because a training bow, 5 or 6 people are using it, the strings are twisting, the knock point might be moving. You might be using a 900 spine arrow one day, maybe an 800 spine arrow the next day. You've got all these variables creeping in. Whereas with your own bow, it's yours. And then you might decide, you know what, my arrows they're going up and down, or You can tune it. You can change your brace height, adjust your knock point, maybe play around with a point in the arrow. There's so many things there that you've got ownership of, and you're constantly fine-tuning that bow to suit you and you alone. But so that's why we always encourage people, just look, get your own bow as soon as possible. But as a club and as a coach, we'll help you with that. We'll help you tune it and get as close a symbiotic relationship between you and the.
Nice word.
Yeah, I got to use that word.
But it's also a case of not getting it too soon, though, because there
correct.
are like a lot of people like me. I think I was doing like 2 lessons and I was like, I'm going to get this one and that one. And you were like, just calm down. Because I was just like, but this one's
did I actually tell you to calm down?
Yes, you did. I have it in writing.
Okay.
Because I was like, this one here and that one there. And it's from a hunting thing in America. And you're like, calm down. But I understand because I have no right to be looking at this stuff when I don't know exactly what my poundage is and that kind of stuff, like, or draw weight, whatever the bloody technical term is. There's no point in a beginner going out and lashing money into stuff and then kind of afterwards going, oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's not right.
And that can and a beginner going out and they spend €400 or €500 on gear, and if they haven't had that conversation with the coach, the club, or even another archer, and they go out, and it can be so disappointing because they might have the wrong spined arrow, so it's going left or right, whatever. The bow is massively overbowed. Yeah, that's the term. And they have an uncomfortable day, and they go, and then on top of that, then they straight out to their first competition, and with a bunch of people they don't know, and it can be very intimidating as well. And then they might just say, that's not for me. And the next thing you see a €500 bow on adverts for 150 and €200.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah.
And to see, for the sake of a little bit of guidance, but also on the beginner's part, have a bit of faith and trust in those around them, because 99% of archers coaches, they're only too willing to help out. Like, so everybody's interested to keep everybody in the game. So I got 492 done on Sunday, and I was delighted with it because if your score is consistently increasing, you get a pin, and it's really nice, just a little recognition, and you get a record. But I got my hotshot pin, which I was delighted with. I've got this ancient compound bow. It's 14 years old. And most of the stuff on it, like the sling I've made, stabilizer I got secondhand, the whole thing got maybe 350, 400 euro. And really, arrows are in rag order, old AliExpress arrows I've put together. Not that I'm out to beat anyone, but there's something nice to know that, like, my bow, I was like, whatever, 30 points behind the next person who I'm not chasing, but they've out there with $4 or $5 grand worth of equipment, and for me it's just to prove a point that, like, look, you don't need high-end gear. So I was delighted with that. That was a lovely course. Great day out, like, so.
Well done. This kind of jumps a bit, but one of the first things that I learned that made a noticeable difference to my shooting. I can't talk. I'm going to say that again. One of the first things I learned that made I can't talk. I'm trying to say something that I learned that made a difference to the way I shoot, because I want to talk about technique and stuff like that, because we're starting out. Weirdly, was my feet position.
Yeah.
Because because the open stance and closed stance, whatever. So if you remember, you trying to teach me the stance, and I kept putting the wrong foot in the wrong place, and because my brain is no. But that definitely made a huge difference. And then I remember I was shooting a bit off still, and I literally just moved forward slightly.
Yeah.
And that corrected a lot of what I was doing. So what are some of the most common mistakes that beginners make?
Some of the common mistakes, obviously, their stance, but again, it's a very straightforward thing. And you look, and then it's about maintaining consistency as well. So you'll often see beginners when they're shooting that they'll shoot an arrow and then they shuffle their feet.
Yeah.
Shoot again, shuffle their feet. Archery's all about consistency and repetition. And you'll often find that, again, I'll use my wife Michelle as an example. For example, she's shooting quite a bit, and she has quite a left drift going on with her arrows. And one of the very, very first thing we do with beginners when they come in, we do our eye dominance test.
Yes.
Okay. And maybe that's something that we do that, and then we don't keep going. We don't return to it every so often.
Sure.
So what I'm thinking Michelle has done, and she's, for the benefit of our listeners, her height's her range is good, height's excellent, gapping is getting there, but we're trying to figure this out. And as a coach, sometimes you just have to go right back to the beginning. What is this? What eye are you aiming at?
Yeah.
We're not 100% sure we're going to try it when we go out there, because when maybe there's a bit of switching going on, and some people find it more comfortable to shoot with both eyes open, they might have a dominant eye. Other people just can't. That's fine. But eye dominance, for example, so when beginners come in, we get them to do the eye dominance test to determine which is the eye that they're going to aim with, and after a while, sometimes you might something's off, and you go, which eye are you aiming at? And you find they've switched back to the opposite eye. A very simple thing to correct. I've seen that a few times with beginners where the eye dominance might switch, and but mostly and things like gripping the bow too tightly or squeezing the nock with their fingers. So there's a certain amount of faith to be had in the equipment as well. Relax your grip on the bow, relax your finger grip on the string, bring it back to your anchor point. Don't be afraid of getting that fixed anchor point in your face. Again, people get intimidated by that as well. And
the eye dominance thing actually is really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that occurred to me ever. Because again, in trying it out, it was always these have a go sessions.
Yeah.
And it was never technical. They were like, is somebody a left-handed shooter or a right-handed shooter?
Yeah.
And you were just kind of like, oh, I'm right-handed, so I'm right-handed shooter. But it was never down to the dominance of the eye.
Yeah.
So the fact that my son shoots left-handed, but he writes with his right hand, to me, I was just like, oh, how?
And it's a comfort thing as well. People might start off shooting and spacing the eye dominance, but they just might decide afterwards, I am so much more comfortable shooting with a right-handed bow. So they'll make the conscious effort to aim with the other eye. And that's something they can do later on down the road. But usually when people, whatever side that they start shooting on, whether it's a left hand or a right hand, that's usually what they stick with. And my daughter, she's right-handed, my eldest daughter, and she shoots a left-handed bow because she's left eye dominant. Everything else is right-handed. Now you might think that may be uncomfortable for her. No, she really likes it. She's still using both hands. At the end of the day.
Ambidextrous bows.
Ambidextrous bows, you can get them.
I saw them, yeah.
Yeah, and they're lovely.
What's the purpose?
I'm not 100% sure, but maybe it's a question of choice. And some of the ambidextrous bows out there, they're lovely bows. I know an archer out there, and she shoots with an ambidextrous bow, doing really well. But if is your dominant side, again, what is the benefit of getting an ambidextrous bow? You're not going to be switching back and forth.
No, maybe you are. Maybe you're bored.
But that's it. If you want to try something different, that's fine. Go for it. Or look, it could be a physiological thing as well. There may be that it could be a joint issue or a flexibility issue, and for some reason you might need to alternate between the two. I don't know. You have that kind of, because everything else stays the same. Your draw length, hopefully, your arrow spine. Now, if your form is changing on each, whether you're shooting right hand or left hand, maybe that's something that warrants more deeper exploration. I'm not sure.
What's a bad habit in archery that's really hard to unlearn later? I think my one was I kept changing my anchor point.
Yeah. I think, okay, for me personally, because I know I do it, and I see other archers doing it, is a static release. Okay. Everything else is spot on. Your full set up, draw, anchor, everything, even the initial like aim, follow, and aim and an expansion. But when I release, there's that momentary pause before I come to follow through.
Okay.
And
so you hold it just after your anchor point,
and the spin point, and sometimes even when but other people say to me that was a static release, and in my head it didn't feel like a static release.
I do that.
Yeah, a lot of people do, and that's a habit that I've been trying to break. No, it's not having, it doesn't have a major impact on my thing, but it just breaks that fluidity of the release.
Sure.
So you release, and there's that momentary, just split second pause before I go to full follow through.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot with some archers, and that can be a difficult habit to break because I've been trying to break it for ages. But look,
so maybe it's unbreakable then.
This is it. And then there's other little things that people might do, maybe gripping the bow or dropping the bow.
Yeah.
These are little things. And I find with that, sometimes you've got somebody working with you, and let's say they're taking footage and showing you maybe the freeze frame, that instance, gets into your mind. You're a little bit more aware of it as well. But fortunately, I think any of the bad habits, to use that word, that archers might have, they're not major impacts on their shot cycle. They're small, niggly little things which stops the shot cycle being ideal, as opposed to compromising in a big way.
Yeah, because any of the big ones are addressed very early
They
on.
are, and that's it. They're big ticket items. You know, whether it's your open stance or you're twisting your body and things, or your elbows too low or too high or whatever. The habits that you do develop most of the time, I find, will be the small things.
Yeah.
And you're into that kind of more perfecting your cycle at that stage, you know.
So then what do you think that a beginner should focus on in their first few months?
Oh, okay. From a biometric and physiological kind of thing, therefore, we just stick to the cycle. And if you don't have a bow, fine, get the rubber band. Just go to the cycle over and over again until it's almost, it's borderline instinctive. Because even though there's 12 or 15 steps in the cycle, there can be many more small little things when you come to anchor, even though you like anchor. But then again, you within that anchor point, there's 5 or 6 little sub steps that's not written down, but they're personal things. Some people in the anchor, when I anchor, I've got a finger touching the corner of my mouth, but I like to nestle my knuckle up against my cheekbone. So these are small little things. Or when I'm at set, relaxed grip, I'll rotate my arm as well. Again, that's not necessarily included in the cycle. So these are little things that the beginner should focus on, is just working on their cycle with their band. The other thing they should focus on is, from a technical point of view, is their bow, obviously. And I don't mean go out and rush and buy one, but it's very important that they start having that conversation and figuring out their draw length, their preferred draw weight, their bow style. That's a conversation that should start immediately after they've done the beginner's course. Because they're going to have to go there sometime anyway. And then, so their shot cycle is improving, they have their new bow, and they start getting out there. And I can't emphasize this enough. When it comes to beginners, do not compare yourself to anybody out there. Just don't even go there. Just go out there, enjoy yourself, relax. The only person you're competing against is yourself. There'll be plenty of time for taking on the big players down the road. But for the moment, just go out, enjoy, meet the people, see the venues, lose your arrows, come back in, buy more, just enjoy it. And because, like I said, the only battle that you're taking on that stage is with yourself.
So. It's fair enough. So then it brings me on to the next question, which is, what small win or milestone beginners should aim for in their first few sessions?
Oh, in the first few sessions, I would think they're a combination of their grouping and small little things, and be mindful, and they need to be kind to themselves as well. Like when you're beginners, you're beginners there, and you have them shooting at 10 yards.
Yeah.
And they first time hold the ball, and the arrows are all over the backstop, and then they start to group in.
Yeah.
And there's beginners there now who are shooting at 20 yards now in the hall. That's great, and they're only shooting a little while. And my arrows are here and there. I said, yeah, but look, you're shooting 20 yards, and you're grouping. All those arrows are within like 6 inches of each other. Okay, when you picked up that ball on day one, 10 yards, there was some on the floor, there was something in the net. That was 10 yards. You're at 20 yards now, and they're within 6 inches of each other. You should bear that in mind. So that's a small win. The other thing, that if they are embarking on competitions, whether it's an indoor competition, like the male match was fantastic, or they go out and do their 3D competition, and they have their scorecard, just record it, and just see if you can beat that next time.
Yeah.
Forget about everybody else. That's if for their own kind of development. Keep it simple.
Tips to improve accuracy and consistency early on. That all goes back, I suppose, to your stance and to your form.
And look, everything in archery, it's all about repetition.
Yeah.
And it's always, ultimately, at the end of the day, practice.
So the best way to practice and improve outside of training sessions, that's with your bands at home, really.
Yes, that's to build up muscle memory, flexibility, and a little bit of strength as well. But these are little things you can be working at. When you have that figured out, you can bring it to a session, and you can get straight into shooting and focusing on other things, because you're already doing that exercise at home. You don't have to have a bow to improve your shot cycle.
So it's just normal exercise bands, resistance bands.
Normal exercise bands, you can get them in different resistances. They don't, and see, that's the thing about exercise bands. See, some people, I'm going to get the most rigid, stiff band. That's going to really build me up as well. It's not about that. The bands are there just to help you improve your cycle, build up a little bit of flexibility, work on your release, your follow through, your expansion.
But you don't want to be fighting with the band. Just you don't want to be fighting with the bow.
Exactly. If I fight with the band, and there's enough. If you want to work out, like go to the gym.
Yeah.
The bands are there not to build mass.
Yeah.
They're there to help you just improve your focus, your shot cycle, your muscle memory. They will improve your expansion and your flexibility, indeed, because that's what you're doing. You're developing your core, your posture, you're expanding your two shoulder blades together. So you get that expansion going. So you have a certain amount of exercise going on, but they're not there to
build you up.
Build you up.
Yeah.
And also, the whole point of bands is like I said, for you to work out things that you don't have to necessarily bring to the hall or bring to the competition, because, like I said, when you have your bow and you're into perfecting other areas of a shot cycle.
So, then we're going to jump onto something else, which is my favorite thing about archery that keeps me coming back. I don't have one particular answer. I just really love doing it. And I think part of it actually is focus and mental clarity with it.
Yeah.
And I think part of what brings me back is the fact that I get to tune out and tune into that instead. And like, I have inattentive ADHD, and I find that obviously occasionally I have a blip where I decide to, for some random reason, change something in the way I shoot. But I find that it actually calms my mind quite a lot and focuses me quite a lot, which is really rare with this. And I think it's therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
And again, it's the whole anarchy thing. It calms me down. So there's less anarchy. Yeah. So for you, what's your favorite thing that keeps you coming back?
I really enjoyed the social aspect. I do make some amazing friends. I love that. I like believe it or not, I like the technical aspect. I'm actually completely wired to it.
Yeah.
It's nice to do well in the competition, don't get me wrong. We be honest with ourselves, or maybe even disingenuous if we're to say it's not about the winning. We all like to have our name called out. It's nice. And but for me, it's the technical aspect. I started off shooting bow hunter.
Yes.
Which is, it's a recurve bow, and it's similar to trad in terms of your limitations. You can't string walk, you have no sight, things like that. But there was another style called bear bow.
Yeah.
Which I fell in love with because, again, there's a certain technical element to it and how you use that bow when it comes to aiming. How you set up the bow, how you use the string, how you aim, even the finger tab. It's a very kind of methodical step-by-step process. And I like working out what I call my crawls, which are where you place your fingers on the string at for each distance. And I really enjoyed that, taking the notes and working things out.
So with that, you don't do the string walking with that? Or
you do. With bear bow, you do.
But there's one where you don't do a string
called bow hunter.
Bow hunter. So it doesn't have the tabs on it. It doesn't have the knock, and you just basically figure it. I might try that one.
Yeah. Now bow hunter you do have a knock on bow hunter, and you can use it, but your fingers must always be touching the knock, whether it's split finger or 3-under.
Yeah.
But with bear bow, again, when I say it's a very similar type of bow. They're metal recurves because you can actually set them up for string walking. Is fun. But it places uneven pressure on the limbs. So it's just something you need to be aware of when you take it up. And that's fine. You can set the bow for that. But the actual technique itself, the actual bear bow concept, is you're using a bow. You're effectively using the entire bow and yourself like a sight. And for each distance, you adjust something on the bow. You're changing your position of your fingers on the bow. And I really like that kind of, I suppose, technical kind of dominance or control over a piece of equipment, that I can manage it and control it and make it do what I want it to do.
Sure.
And so then I moved on to another style moved on to compound. I shoot a style called Freestyle Limited. It's not widely used by most archers. Most archers will shoot a category called Freestyle Unlimited, the various kind of bow hunter rounds, where they use a trigger release. But I shoot a compound bow using just my fingers. But like that as well, the bow has to be set up a certain way. I like it to be a low poundage bow. I like it to be a fairly long one, because when I draw the bow, my fingers aren't being pinched. But like that, setting up that bow, most of them are fairly old. I had to do a little bit of work on them. The sights, the strings, the tuning, the cam alignment, the cam timing. Again, it was the technical aspect of that. And when you have all that set up and you go out and shoot, and it works really well, and the bow's quiet, and you get your gains, your pin or your medal. It's not the medal, but it's the fact that I'm able to this device, this machine, which I really enjoy putting together and fixing and repairing and taking it out there and having it work for me. So for me in archery, I love every aspect of it. For me, it's the technical aspect. As you say, it's a calming thing as well, because I'm in the garage there working away on this, and if I'm not working on a bow, I'm making a string, just there in my own little world.
And do you think that helps with your patience and your discipline and things like that as
It
well?
does.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it does.
Because I've noticed, like, in day-to-day life, look, I'm usually on it. But with archery, I'm a lot calmer, believe it or not, than I would be normally. I'm a lot more disciplined as well. I'm a lot more focused. And even if I don't shoot well, I have a little rant or whatever, but I just find that I center myself a bit quicker. I deal with it a bit better. I just think about what I just did, reassess things, maybe put a foot slightly differently, an inch, move it an inch or something like that. But it's definitely helped me with my patience and discipline and my frustrations, how I deal with stuff.
Yeah, but I find it has had a very kind of it's allowed me explore myself as well in many ways, and I don't want to sound too zen about it as well. For me, it's over the years I've been doing it, it's had to invoke a certain degree of self-reflection as well. Absolutely. As a person as well. Yeah. Because again, it's not just the shooting aspect, it's how you interact with people and the responsibilities you take on, whether it's with a club or as a coach or even just as a mutual archer, like amongst your equals. So I know it's an ongoing journey. That's what I really like it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, the whole Zen thing or whatever, but it definitely, there's a lot of kind of self-reflection in it. Definitely, I'd agree with that. Jumping again. Yeah. Do you need to be strong to be good at archery? Do you think?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Do you know, I was going back to when I was in college years and years ago, just briefly, an old lecturer said to me, and he said, look, lads, you're going out there, you're engineers. Out of the world now, off you go. And lads, I'm going to give this one bit of advice now, as an engineer, to an engineer. If anybody ever asks you a question, whether in the local authority or consultancy or whatever, if anybody ever asks you a question that you don't really know the answer to, always say, it depends. So it depends. It all depends.
I think there are elements you do have to have a certain level of strength.
You do.
You really do.
You do. You have to have a certain level of core strength and upper body strength.
But you build it up.
You build it up. Yeah. And flexibility as well. And it's not something that people should automatically dismiss themselves over, that I haven't done sports over the years, or I'm not flexible, I'm not strong. I didn't do any sports, period, ever. Didn't do it at all. Nothing. So it's not about strength in terms of prowess or anything like that. There's people out there doing archery, like I've often said there, that people have taken up archery in their 70s. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And people who've taken up archery with shoulder replacements and various other kind of restrictions and things like that. And going back to the training bows, there's a huge range of equipment out there to suit a broad range of archers. Yeah. And not even just people from, say, a strength point of view, people who've got various other restrictions and mobility, all in many ways. Say, for example, we'll touch upon, say, wheelchair users, for example. Yeah. So we have some amazing target ranges out there in terms of accessibility. There's a range of compound bows, which are short bows. Going back to the training bows as well, the different poundages, right down to maybe 10 or 11 pounds. Regardless of what age you are, your physical prowess, your strength, your mobility, there's a huge range out there. And not just in terms of equipment, but the competition formats as well and layouts. 3D shooting mightn't suit everybody. And it's not even necessarily a mobility thing. Some people just mightn't like it. That's fine. Again, there's target archery, there's indoor archery. And it's nice to see indoor archery and target archery also increasing in popularity. Yeah. Because it's opening up archery, the accessibility of archery, to a whole broader range of people out there. So strength is important for many things, but it's not a deal breaker. And it's not necessarily a deal breaker in archery. And the other thing as well, and I just it's not about increasing your strength either, because some people start archery and their objective is, do you know what? I'm going to build up my muscle mass. I'm going to train. I really want to shoot a 50-pound bow or 45-pound bow. Fine. Okay. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But it's not necessarily about that. You don't have to reach for that kind of level. You don't have necessarily to take up archery with the objective of building up your strength to shoot stronger bows. Some people do. That's fine. But it's not a precursor or an obligation or something that you have to do. So, yeah, strength is a factor, but not a big one.
From my perspective, obviously, I am morbidly obese. I have that stupid back injury. I have no core strength because of C-section and everything else. Yeah. This is for the people out there who've had C-sections, and they're probably like, I can't do this. Yes, you bloody can.
Of course they can.
I'm being held together with sellotape at this stage, but I'm able to go out there and hold a bow and do whatever I need to do. I wear a back brace to support me. I sometimes put on physio tape in different parts to help there as well. And I've noticed my core is strengthening, which is helping my back as well.
Yeah.
I am getting a bit more flexible.
Yeah.
It's only good that's coming from it. Obviously, for physically to be better, but it's not restricting me in participating.
Absolutely. And it's not a sprint either.
Yeah.
And again, people shouldn't compare themselves to other people when they get out there. It's a personal journey. The only person you're battling with is yourself.
But that's the thing. There's a lot of people who would be like me, who would think that, oh, I can't do it, or they're ashamed to go out and whatever.
No.
Like, just if somebody is listening to this and they're in that kind of boat and they're like, I just don't have the confidence to do it or whatever, I would encourage them to come to our club or go to any club, so Strongbow Archers, or any club, and they're going to be fine. They're going to be accepted. They're going to go in, they're going to do their thing. Nobody's going to be pointing and laughing at them.
And what's nice about it is there's so much about archery can be tailored to the archer.
Exactly.
It's just, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And also, it's not necessarily that there's a team aspect to it, but if you're a solitary warrior, if that's what you want to do, it's there. You can pick up your bow, you can do your competition, go to the woods or go to the hall, do your thing, shoot, tune out, perfect your technique. It can be as open or as closed or as social or whatever way you want. You have that broad range there. And again, going back to beginners, like I often say, even not necessarily about say a mobility thing.
Yeah.
People might be just at a point in their lives, say they might have retired and go, I'm too old for that. Boat sailed. Feckin' hasn't. No way.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've often said this, some of the best archers out there have only picked up a bow for the very, very first time in their late 40s, early 50s, whatever.
Yeah. This is the thing. I used to be tight head prop in rugby. And so coming over to archery was very delicate and soft. Because obviously I'm buying my first bow and it's a 20-pound bow. And I remember being just like, no, I have to be pulling a 30 or 40. No, I'm strong. I can do this. But I learned that repetition and everything. Yeah, I can pull, again, going back to that 43-pound bow, I can do that.
Yeah.
And I did some really nice shots with it. But if I couldn't do that in a competition, so if I have a 20-pound bow, I'm going to be there, and it's going to be easier for me in a competition. Yeah. So I think it's also about, you go along and you learn your limits.
Absolutely. And acknowledging that. Yeah. You go in there and you see somebody shooting a 30-pound bow, and all of a sudden, I've got a 20-pound bow, and there's a person like
half my size
and whatever else. Different, like, and they're shooting 15 pounds higher. And again, do not compare yourself to other archers. Everybody's got their own separate story, and don't even go there. It's your bow, your technique, your style. You're getting out of it what you want. And as for the bow itself, whether it's a 20-pound bow or a 40-pound bow, at the end of the day, at 20 yards, they're going to do the exact same thing.
Just sound different.
Just aim different. That's it.
Yeah, so like I've tried the recurve one.
Yeah.
What other ones have I tried? I don't think I've tried any other ones.
You've tried you've tried some of the trad ones.
Oh yeah.
You've tried the training ones are recurve bows. You've tried a trad bow with the feathers, and
I think I want to try the one I was saying a minute ago where you can't string. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to try one of those. Definitely.
Anytime, no problem. I'll set it up.
Yeah.
That's no problem.
You'll bring it tomorrow.
Yeah.
No pressure.
I'd love to see more barebow shooters out there. We need more barebow shooters.
I like the idea of just winging it with it.
Yeah.
I'm staying away from the compound for as long as possible, because I'll probably end up loving it, and I'll hate myself for it.
When I was doing my level 2 coaching course, and the person who's coaching me, Colleen Moore, level 4 coach, a wonderful person, I still turn to her for advice, and sometimes just to annoy her as well. And she said, listen, you're going to have to learn compound. And I was like, And it wasn't that I wanted to compete with them. It's just all those little bits and pieces and moving components and all the rest of it. I couldn't resist.
Yeah.
So I bought one.
The engineering, yeah.
Yeah. And when I bought one, it wasn't even with the objective of shooting with it. I just had to take it apart into all its little pieces, put it back together. And then for me, that was the whole intimidatory aspect gone.
Yeah.
I understood it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I like to understand how things work. So that's what I did. And then, so I sold that one because it wasn't really the right size for me. Bought another one, which is another fairly old one, and just hit the ground with it and been playing with it ever since. Love it, in fact. It's great fun.
This is a random question. There's nothing to do with what you just said, but there we go. Why don't we use back quivers.
Why don't we use back quivers?
Is it because they're pretty? You're going to be taking it and walloping somebody in the face.
There's no real reason.
They look cool.
They do look well. That's it. Some people do use back quivers.
Yeah.
Some people use target quivers where your arrows are forward. Some people use field quivers where they're leaning backwards. Some people use quivers where it's actually on the back, just the lower back.
Some people have the horse ones, but they just they're not on the horse.
It really is personal preference.
Yeah.
My Olivia used to use a back quiver, but what she found was because she was always crouching down, they would just slide out.
Yeah, yeah.
There's different techniques, or where you're shooting, how you're shooting, whatever. It's not. There's no reason why you can't.
I thought it was a health and safety thing to be walloping people in the face or something.
No, I mean it's because it's just.
Yeah, no me.
No, it's a personal preference, and there are archers out there using back quivers.
Yeah, I've seen some really pretty ones.
Yeah, there's a beauty, and look, that's the thing about archery as well, from an aesthetic point of view. When you get your bow flying, besides shooting it, it's also.
Artur stole my quiver.
Did he?
Yes. So I think we need to kick him out of the club.
Yeah, I think ban him.
Yeah.
Yeah, no more archery for Artur. We'll take his bow and kick him out.
We'll take his quiver.
Yeah.
Kick him out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually thinking I'm not letting him put me off. I'm going to get it in black and he can shut up because it's mine. It was mine at the start and that's it.
It's a beautiful quiver.
It's beautiful, isn't it? And I hate him. The minute I saw it, I was like, are you joking me? I've had that in my bag in Etsy for long. Like how long, I don't know. But
it's funny how personal people can make these things as well, and that's nice too. No, I'm not saying getting personal, but make it personal.
No, I get personal.
You can. There's a certain level of, not everybody, but for many people, it becomes part of their identity or their persona, or who would they want to maybe.
It's like putting on a
show
costume.
As a person. Maybe, yeah, exactly. And people are shooting trad, but they might want to maybe emphasize the fact that they embrace traditional archery in a big way. So therefore, not just the trad bow, they might have a bespoke, handmade local quiver thing, or they might make their own wooden arrows. And in many ways, it's an expression of who they are as a person as well. And so it's not just their shooting; it's the equipment and what they wear to take to the course, and it allows people that kind of, it forms a little bit of a sort of identity for them as well.
Yeah.
So and whereas other people just don't care, that's fine. Go out and shoot, 100%, no problem with that.
Yeah.
And so that's what's nice about archery. You can play with many aspects of it as well.
I'm looking forward to getting out there and competitions and stuff, and just seeing all the different people and their different techniques.
And that's one thing I would encourage people is, whether it's indoor or outdoor or target or field, get out there as soon as possible. When you do your beginner's course, have the conversation with your coach, tool up and get out.
That's what we're going to talk about in the next one, is the types of archery.
Sure.
So that's that one. Thank you for listening.
No problem.
And did you say no problem?
Did I say no problem? I always say no problem.
I'm not thanking you for listening. Thanks to our listeners for listening.
Yes, thank you very much.
And see you in the next. See you, hear you, listen. What?
We'll catch up.
Thank you on the next episode. There you go.